Oh, thank goodness. My turkeys will not stay in a net to save their lives. Really, to save their life, because I'm going to kill them. Thanksgiving is about to come early around here because they keep stepping all over and destroying my plants. But thankfully, I'm looking at the new planting that I have, which is what I was most worried about, that they would come in here with their little turkey feet and scratch through all the compost and in my new plants, but it mostly looks fine. But that's not why I came down to the tunnels today. I came down to the tunnels today to give you some ideas on what to do with all the cherry tomatoes that I know that you all have before the frost comes and kills them all. If you're like me and your tomatoes got slightly neglected and half died but are now having a resurgence with the cooler, easier weather, then I'm sure you have lots of cherry tomatoes and you're not sure what to do with them all. Go away. Thanksgiving is about to come early because y'all are driving me nuts. Get 'em, Mo. What is my life if not chaotic? I'm going to get busy gleaning the rest of the fruit off of these plants because I highly doubt I'm going to have many more this season. So I'm going to clean off my plants, and then I will give you a few easy recipes that you can do with all of your cherry tomatoes before the frost comes and kills them. And I can't forget to check my jungle of free plants that reseeded for me from last year. Well, I think this is about as good as it's gonna get for the rest of the year. But you know what? There's always next year. And we'll do better next year, won't we? I'm back inside now with my cherry tomato haul. One of my very favorite ways to preserve cherry tomatoes, for one, I guess the simplest way, is whenever you're preserving your tomatoes, whether you're making sauce or diced tomatoes or ketchup or whatever your heart desires, whatever your plan for your tomatoes are, I always throw in cherry tomatoes. It doesn't have to be just sauce tomatoes to make sauce. I use all different kinds of colors, all different shapes, sizes, flavors, and it always turns out just fine. The only thing that I might caution you not to do is make a whole sauce of just cherry tomatoes if you're going to do it the lazy way like me and not take the skins off and not take the seeds out. Just because cherry tomatoes tend to have a lot of seeds in them, and so you're gonna have a really liquidy, seedy sauce instead of a meaty sauce. But you can do it if that's all you have. But one of my favorite ways to save my cherry tomato harvest is I dehydrate them. Now these are not their final form. These are destined to be covered in oil. These are going to be covered in oil. I need to run to the store, but just imagine this is covered in olive oil. And that makes sun-dried tomatoes. And these are delicious on pizza, thrown in soups. I throw them in all my recipes all winter long. It doesn't taste exactly like tomatoes fresh. When you dehydrate them, it concentrates the sugar, so they're like pretty sweet. I use them that way Now, you don't want to cover these in oil and put them in your pantry for long-term storage, just because there's a chance that your oil can go rancid. But you can put it in the fridge and then take it out when you want to use it, let it come to room temp, and it'll be liquidy and delicious, just like the day you made it. I love to put these on pizza in the wintertime. So imagine these were clean. I just pulled, well, they look pretty clean. They are clean. I just pulled a batch of cherry tomatoes off of it. But all you have to do is half your cherry tomatoes and then just line them all up. Just fill your dehydrator trays, turn your dehydrator on, and just pay attention. I think mine took a day or two, and I had to switch out the trays, you know, move the bottom ones to the top, top ones to the bottom. And then once there's no moisture left in them, you're good to go. Plus, once you've used some of the tomatoes and there's a little bit of extra oil in the jar, or at the end after you use all the tomatoes, it makes the best. You can marinate things in this, like chicken. You can also make your salad dressings with this, and how amazing would this be on like a spinach salad with some cheese and sun-dried tomatoes and anything else your little heart desires. I love to add like a million things to the tops of my salads, especially in the wintertime when I'm eating a lot of salad, because we tend to eat a lot in season. I'll add different toppings to spice it up so that I'm not just eating leaves every day. Another way that you can preserve your cherry tomato harvest is by fermentation. So you're going to start with a nice clean jar, sterilized, but I just pulled mine out of the dishwasher, so it's pretty sterile. I'm going to add my cherry tomatoes to the jar. A lot of people don't chop these up, but I'm not going to like the pop when it's pickled, because when you ferment things, it gives it a little tang. It tastes pickled, mildly pickled. I think that this is going to make a great cold pasta salad. Maybe I'm the only one in my house that's going to eat it, but that's okay. I've got about this many tomatoes in the jar. I'm just going to continually layer garlic, tomatoes, and fresh basil in mine. You can season it however you like. If you like it a little spicy, you could add chili flakes. I just don't, because I'm a weenie. I love garlic, so I pulled out a big bulb of garlic, and I'm gonna use the whole thing in here. Don't be shy on the garlic. Garlic has so many immune boosting qualities. It's antiviral, antibacterial, antimicrobial, antioxidant, all the things, all the antis. So fermenting, it's kind of an acquired taste, but if you get used to it and you learn to love it, fermenting is the only way in food preservation that you actually increase the nutritional value of your food. Because you're creating that healthy you're creating that healthy gut bacteria, and actually a lot of your immune system health comes from how healthy the bacteria in your gut are. So trying to really gently rock mine this year so that I don't get sick. For my fermented things that make its own juices, like obviously this tomato, I'm not going to have to add a brine. I'm just going to add dry salt, and I'm going to do that, you know, layer by layer. For this recipe, you are going to need 4 tablespoons of salt per quart. So if you do a pint, you need 2 teaspoons. If you do a half gallon, you need 8, you know, math. But I find it easiest to just layer it in here and hope that, for one, I have enough salt, because it's the bottom of the barrel. But you want a good salt for this. You don't want iodized table salt. You want a natural salt. I like Celtic sea salt. If I'm gonna use a chunky salt, it's the best. For this, I'm gonna use a fine salt, and I'm using Redmond real salt. It's mined here in the United States, not somewhere across the globe. So that's nice. The salt in your ferment is very important because that's what keeps the good bacteria and bad bacteria in check. So we are growing bacteria. I like to think of ferments as sourdough because that's really popular right now for folks. And it makes more sense because sourdough, you can see it growing. You can see it collecting the yeast in the air and growing. We're doing the same thing when we ferment. We are growing our own beneficial bacteria, and when you do it correctly and your salt to brine ratio is correct, it inhibits the bad bacteria from taking over. So, but if you think that you've done it wrong, you'll know. It won't smell right. It'll smell bad. It'll smell rotten, yucky. It's going to have a nice pickly smell. But it shouldn't smell bad. It should smell kind of like a pickle. I like to use the old saying, your nose knows, for just about everything. And just take this recipe as a suggestion. You can add whatever herbs and seasonings and flavors you like. Like I was just sitting here thinking I should have grabbed oregano and thyme out of the garden while I was back there to put in this. But that's all right. I have enough cherry tomatoes in here to make like several jars, which I probably will continue to do after I shut the camera off. And I can put a little bit of different seasonings in each jar so that they can all be a little different. I have filled up my jar. I'm not going to fill it up to the tippy top because you want to leave about 1 inch of headspace in your jar. But I am going to put the lid and the ring on and just shake it so that the tomatoes kind of start to release their juices and it's making its own brine of the salt and the tomato juice inside of this jar. If you wanted this to be a true sauce, you could run this through your food processor or use an immersion blender to make it liquidy. I kind of just want a chunky sauce to put on top of my pasta or a piece of toast or whatever I'm gonna have that day, because you don't want to eat a lot. Like, we're not gonna sit down and eat a whole meal of this fermented sauce because it has so much good bacteria in it. You don't want to overload your system. It's not gonna hurt you by any means, but it might give you a bellyache. So think of this more as like your side dish, and you want to eat. Your goal is to eat something fermented at every meal. But my goal in reality is to eat something fermented every day. And I can do that. I usually get my ferments in because I make my own yogurt, and it's fermented milk. You can see how much this has condensed down, so I'm going to put a few more tomatoes in it. Here's the final step in making the world's easiest pasta sauce, because you don't have to spend hours at the stove boiling it down, which is my favorite part. You have your full jar of tomatoes. You need a weight of some kind because you want your whatever you're fermenting to stay under the brine. So it needs to be under the juice inside of your jar. I bought the Mason Tops fermentation kit a long time ago, like many years ago, and it still works exactly the same as it did, but it comes with these glass weights, and I am going to hope that I didn't overflow my jar and just push it down so that nothing is floating above the weight. If you don't have a weight, or a puck, I think is what they call it, you can find a good rock. We all love good rocks, don't we? But you could find a rock that's relatively this size, and you just want to boil it to sterilize it, and then you can use a rock as your weight. You don't have to have fancy supplies. But if you do have a fermentation kit, that's when you put the top on. It's vented. It allows the gases, because it's going to produce some gases as it's fermenting. It just allows it to release so that it's less babysitting that you have to do, which is worth its weight in gold, right? Because we're all doing 50 things at once. And how are we going to remember to babysit this? But if you don't have a kit and you want to try fermenting, easy peasy, no problem. You just better have a better memory than I do. You're going to just use your top, your lid for a mason jar, and then put the lid on, or the ring on. Easy peasy. But you're going to have to come back once or twice a day and burp it. So you don't want to open it all the way, because you want it to keep its own environment. So you're not trying to introduce things, or like, what if something falls into it? But you just need to loosen the ring and you'll hear the gas escape. So it's called burping it. You're going to need to burp it 1 or 2 times a day and sit it on a plate. You're going to want to also do that anyway. But I'm just going to sit this on a plate outside of direct sunlight for 2 to 3 days. And all you have to do is just taste it to know when it's done. So it shouldn't be salty anymore. It should be slightly bubbly, slightly pickle tasting, and ready to go. And once it's done fermenting, you just pop it in the fridge, and this will last many, many months at a refrigerator temperature. This will easily last me all winter. Obviously, I'm going to eat the jar before winter's over, but this could I've had ferments last a year. Now, softer fruits like this don't last as long. Sauerkraut lasts a long time because it takes a long time to break down the fibers in the cabbage anyway. So I'm just going to take my jar that I finished and put it over here out of the way, not light my sleeve on fire with these candles. I made beeswax candles this weekend, and it's my new obsession, and every room in my house is going to have 50 of these candles. Anyway, I just wanted to give you guys a couple of ideas to use up the last of our cherry tomatoes, because the frost is coming. If it hasn't came to you yet, she's on her way. And if you live in a zone where frost isn't a thing, don't tell me. I'm jealous. But I'm quickly running out of light, so me and Mo are going to go. Thank you guys for watching. Until next time.